Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to episode 9 of our interaction and inventory system tutorial series. I've actually been under the weather for quite a bit. This time of year, I usually have allergy problems, which acted up. And then, of course, it turned into like a sinus infection, which actually turned into like bronchitis. And it's been 2 or 3 weeks, but I'm actually finally shaking back and hopefully getting back to 1 or 2 videos a week. So with this episode 9 of the inventory system tutorial series, I wanted to just break the ice, get back in the swing of things with a quick video on setting up a filter. A lot of people have basically talked about or requested in the Discord what boils down to some kind of filtering function. So we're going to jump right into that. Now, if you're following along, you pretty much should have, with some edge cases, maybe, you pretty much should have an inventory system that we can pick up things, we can drag and drop. We have a chest. We can, drag stuff and we can drop it on the ground. There we go. Cool. So we have all that working, and we actually have the beginnings of our crafting system going. But like I said, let's do a filtering function. So basically, we can say that the goal is to more or less, maybe you have some icons up top, and you say, okay, I just want to show the food. I just want to show the weapons. I just want to show these kind of things. To where it could be basically anything you want, and you can filter it. And this is especially powerful for things like using the same kind of grid setup, but for, shops or something like that. Or you just want to show, maybe you have a shopkeeper that just sells certain items, and these are the only items you want to show in his inventory. So let's jump right into that. It's actually not too complicated, and it just fits right into the system we actually already have. So in our ultra modular int and inventory system folder, let's go into our components, our item container components, and let's get our parent item container component. Now, we basically just need one variable, which we will say filter tag. There we go. And we can say, or let's say filter tags. Let's do one. Well, yeah, we can do multiple. So let's do filter tags. And we more or less will be able to filter by multiple things if we want. Cool. And we'll make that instance editable. And yeah. And actually, look, let's throw in these instance editable ones into a category called settings, which is going to be the max inventory size, our filter tags, our max row size, our resize inventory, our show debug, our container type. And let's go ahead and actually, let's leave it like that. Okay, cool. And we'll put the inventory as well into settings, because we may want to. So if we go to our third person character, we got third person blueprints, third person character. You see, when we do stuff like that, when we make these instance editable, what we're basically saying is we want to be able to mess with them when they're actually assigned right here. We can click on these, and then we have access to all these settings. So, and the reason why I put the inventory in here, because you'll see most of these are just like we set them and then they are used. This inventory, we kind of don't want to mess with in the middle of the gameplay, but there'll be some instances where you're setting up a shopkeeper or something and you want to define their inventory just right here in the blueprint screen. So in that case, that's why I put it in that category. But so if we're doing it like this, we have our filter tag. We can just go in and we can say, okay, I want to filter by, you guys might hear my dog drinking water so loud. It's a golden retriever. Sorry about that. So we can go in, we can filter tags. We can say, okay, I just want to, and this may be on button click. This may be just by default. You can choose. We can say, okay, I just want to show, I just want to show materials and equipment. Boom. And we hopefully we'll be able to come up with a function that basically just says, okay, only show materials and equipment or whatever we select. So let's go into our UI folder and our widgets folder and our inventory folder and our item grid. And we can go into the graph. And here we have, I'm going to comment these. Let's say pre-construct, and I'm going to turn the comment on, move that out the way. And then we have our big build grid function. Cool. Bam. All right. And now, so basically you can see we get this, we have the inventory and we go through it and spawn the inventory. Now, in a perfect world, we don't really care. Nothing will care about what filter what until this point right here. And ideally, we come up with some kind of function that takes this inventory, filters it, and spits out the filtered inventory, basically. Okay, and basically, we're just going to try to do that and make that function now. So let's say um, get filtered inventory. There we go. And we will take in our, maybe let's just call it filter inventory or try filter inventory. Oops. And we will take, well, no, we don't need to take anything because we have, well, let's make it a, let's take it in just because we never know. In the future, you may want to use this and, not pull it from a actual container component. So let's do an input of inventory slots. So we'll say inventory slots. Boom. Oh, we need to make that an array though. Let's make that an array. And then we will actually just promote it to a local variable. We'll call filtered inventory slots local. And I will delete that. I just promoted it to a variable to make it easy to put it down here. But basically, we're going to clear this because we're going to move forward and do some checks and add some things to this array. This will ultimately be the inventory that we want to show up. However, we want to clear it at the start so we don't, if we recall it, we don't start with something already in there. So we have our inventory slots and we have our local. Now, basically we want to get our, where is it? Components, our item container component. And actually we can say, let's do that as an input as well. A single input for gameplay tag container, and we'll say filter tags, just so we can use this function when we need to without actual reference to a container component. So we have the inventory slots that are coming in, and we have the filter tags that we want to, filter for. Let's see if we make literal gameplay tag container. Is there I tell you what we can do. I was looking for a quick way to see if it's empty or not, but it doesn't look like there's a function for that. So we can do this. We can get our filter tags gameplay tag container and then break it into an array of gameplay tags. And then we can see if it's empty or not. And there should be a is not empty function that we can kind of only proceed with if it is indeed not empty, which means we are actually trying to filter, filter by something. And we can say get inventory slots. And if we don't want to filter, we can just plug this in and return the regular inventory from before. Let's call an output for filtered inventory slots. Hopefully that makes sense. So if it's not empty, that means we actually want to filter the inventory, in which case we're going to filter it. But if it's empty, which is, it's not empty, then we're just going to return this right here. Cool. And so now if it is not empty, how are we going to go about filtering this? Well, first thing we can do is get our inventory slots, which is this right here. This, I actually should maybe change that to make it more clear. We'll say incoming inventory slots. There we go. And we'll say get incoming inventory slots, just so we don't get confused and think this is our other one. Oops, yeah. I'm going to duplicate this and return it as the output on that. Cool. There we go. And so we have our incoming inventory slots. Now, the way we've set it up is all these item container components should be, resized to max. So we're just going to get the length of this, which will tell us how many how many items are in the inventory total. And so, and actually, let's try to do it this way. So we can just basically loop through all these. So let's get a for each loop. And this is going to loop through all the items that are in this inventory. It's going to loop through them, and we're just going to see, we're going to break this struct, and right here we have the tag. And so if we get our get filter tags, this is the filter tags as the input, we can say has tag, and if it does have the tag, and we can actually make this an input, just because you may want to filter for very specific items, and you can do that here. But in general, no, we won't look for an exact match because we're kind of just looking for the category of item. So if it matches the category of item, and let's not forget to get exact match and plug that in here. If it is an exact match, then we will take our local filtered inventory slots and add it. And that'll be this right here. Boom. Right? Okay. Now, so right here we have an inventory, a filtered inventory in array with just the items that match the tag we're looking for, right? And so if we return this and proceed, we will get our filtered items. But let's say you have a grid of 30 and this filtered inventory just has 6 in it. If we just went forward at like this, then of course the you would, when you print the grid or when you display the grid for that inventory, it's only going to show these 6 items. It's not going to show the whole grid with empty slots. Let me delete that, with empty slots like we have. So what we want to do is basically what we did at in our item container on begin play right here. We resize the inventory. We just resize it, right? So we can go ahead and let's get our incoming inventory slots. We can say length, sorry. And we just need to resize our filtered inventory on the complete. Sorry, I keep wanting to put that on the false for some reason. We just want to resize our filtered inventory slots local variable to the length of the inventory that we passed in. Hopefully that makes sense. And then we can return this, get a return node off the completed, and we can basically just pass in our filtered inventory slots. Now, hopefully that is straightforward and makes a tad bit of sense, but hopefully you get that we are basically let's do it in practice. So let's go right here. Let's make some room. And remember, this is where we start to like draw the inventory items to the screen, right? So right here, we can say, just in case, we can say this, and we can actually get this, get filter tags. And actually, we kind of built that into our function. And actually, if we go back in here, we can make this pure. And something I've been doing lately, if you go to advanced, you can actually make this most pure functions const as well to save processing. And we basically want to just pass that in here. And this is going to be now the array that we create the widgets based off of. And so right here in our item container component, remember this right here, this item container component is basically just this right here, which we are passing anytime we want to build an inventory to the screen. We call this function and we pass in what item container component we want to use to populate that inventory, right? And that's going to be the filter tags that we've set up for that inventory. And I'm going to do exact match no for now. I just put this here just in case you have you may, for your specific use case in your game, you may have a scenario where you're going to use this function where you do need an exact match, but for our purposes we won't. So yeah, this is the filter tags that you set up in your item container component, right? And so the incoming inventory slots is just going to be this right here, which originally was what we did this, but now we're passing it in there. And so if we have a filter, it's going to do the exact same thing it's always done, except it's going to be filtered if we have assigned like tags to filter by. So if we go into our third person character, item container component, we have our filter tags. Let's filter by material. Let's just make sure we have a sort or something out here. Hold on. Where is it? Item container. No. Third person character, filter tags. Let's see. Let's filter by equipment. So if we go in here, that means we'll be in our player inventory, we're going to be filtering by equipment now. So if I pick this up and I bring it up, you see it's not there. Now it's in my inventory, but it's not showing up. And if I come here, no. No, okay, guys. I was like, what is going on? But so basically, I was testing things to see what was up. And I went through, which we'll go to show you these kind of things happen, but I went through this whole thing to realize it's this function right here. This must be new. So what we were doing was we were seeing if the filters tag has a tag, right? So check if a tag container has a specified tag, but that was not working for some reason. And when I tested this in different versions of Unreal, maybe like 5.3, 5.2, this worked perfectly. But it seems if we pull off the tag container and type tag, we have matches any tag. It seems like it wants us to do this one because it works if you do this one. So when you're checking for if a, like, I think this has tag one is really good if you do want an exact match. But I think that the way we're looking for it, I think they changed it, or maybe it worked like this all along to where, you know, it needs to be set up where if you're just looking for this, for instance, we're not looking for the exact match in this case. It needs to come as tag one, and then the tag two would come from the container, which I guess is like a newer function that they added to handle that. So yeah, basically we just need to switch this matches any tag. For what we did have was has tag, and I just went to try it and it didn't do anything. So if we change it to this one, it'll work perfectly. And then we're adding it if it matches. Excuse me. And on completed, we're resizing it, and then we're returning the filtered loop. And remember, we're clearing it right here. Oh, which I was doing some testing. So let me fix it how it was. So this right here was our incoming inventory slots. And so at the beginning, we're clearing our local variable. We're checking if our filter tags are empty or not, just to make sure we don't do all this for nothing when no filter tags are set. And then we are going through the incoming inventory slots, checking to see if they match any of our filter tags and adding them if they do. And now right there, you're done. But when you draw the inventory to the screen, it's not going to have all your grid, like your full size grid. It would just be however many items are in here. So after that, once we completed, we need to resize it to the length of the array that we passed in. And then we just return our filtered inventory local variable array. Boom. And that'll work. However, I was thinking, so if we go to the event graph, we're going to want to basically, in a future episode, or, as you expand on this system, we're going to want to change this filter tags variable. So what I'm thinking we should do is in our item container component, we should call this default filter tags. And that'll basically make it so it always filters by these tags, right? This item container tag. However, you may want to hit a button and then change the filter, right? So let's create a custom event for build filtered grid. Oh no, let's do refresh filtered grid. Sorry, the naming is very important. Now I basically wanted to keep it the same as this, but let's go. So refresh filtered item grid. There we go. And it looks like I put spaces, so in the other one. So I'm going to put spaces in this one. And we will basically add one input of gameplay tag container. and say filter or tags to filter. Bam. And we basically want to do the same thing. Copy this clear children. And we will go straight into this. And let's put this up here maybe. But we do want to do one thing. So if basically how we're doing this if our item container component has these filters set, like if there's something set in this variable, then that will basically always be the filter. However, let's create another input for this refresh filtered item grid and say overwrite defaults. And if with this Boolean, we can decide if we want to actually like add these tags that we want to filter to the default ones that we set, or we want to replace the default ones that we set with these. So we'll need a variable in this item grid for active tags to filter. Or let's say current. That sounds a little confusing. So say current filtered tags of type gameplay tag container. And so basically when we build item grid from our container, we're going to get this. And it's just going to use we'll just update this variable as that. But then we'll have the ability to make a call from our UI manager component to actually refresh the item grid and update the filter. Now we do need to do this as well. Get rid of this. For our try filter inventory function, we need to get rid of the variable we were just using and use our new current filter tags. And in our refresh filtered item grid, we'll need to set this. So this is our current filter tags variable. We'll set this and we'll get a select node. And basically, depending on a couple things, we'll determine what we want to populate this with. And really, it's only one thing, and it's going to be so either whether this is checked or if we get our current filter tags and we get the length of that array, or actually no, we can say is empty. Yeah, so if this is empty, which this is basically going to represent like just the default filter tags that you set up in your item container until you call this function, right? So, and right here when we call this function, we may not want to overwrite the defaults, but it may not have this variable in our container component might not be set, and there may be no defaults, in which case we just want to set the current filter tags as this. So basically, whether we want to override them or if we never had any to begin with, we plug that in for true, then we just want to set this current filter tags as these tags to filter incoming. As the one incoming, we're just going to set it there. Now, if it's not, then we're going to want to get our current filter tags and append it. Oops. So it looks like we can't do a select. So let's do a branch. So we'll do a branch right here off this OR condition that we just did the select with. And actually, let's move this so I have a little more space. So there we go. So yeah, so refresh filtered item grid, we'll clear the children, and then we'll have a condition. And if it's true, we're just going to set the current filter tags to the tags we're passing in, because in that case, whether this is empty or we have this checked, that means we just want to bypass the ones that are set up in the container component itself. However, if it's false, if one of those is false, if we check it, we just want to append it. We want to append it to there, boom. And that should do it. And that should give you a function to make calls from, outside of the actual filter set up in the container component. Let's comment this. Cool. And our third person character, we have our player inventory. Let's filter by consumable. And if we do this, we have nothing, which that was an equipment. But if we get a consumable, boom, we have it and it's showing it. Bam. So that should do it for our filter. If you guys have any trouble, I might be a little rusty, so I don't know how good the tutorial was, but hopefully you guys got the hang of it. And if you have any questions, be sure to join the Discord. We have a very active community. And that's going to be it, guys. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.